So good to be home. Thank you, choir. As usual, you're fabulous and wonderful. All right. Today I wanted to talk with you about being a part of a bigger world. And I think that's what we all seek to do, isn't it? We're all seeking to expand our consciousness. We want more love, more prosperity, more creativity. And you all understand the laws of the universe and the laws of your own consciousness. You are currently experiencing the total happiness, joy, prosperity, and peace that you and your thoughts will allow. So, in order to have greater prosperity, joy, and peace, we need to expand. We need to get bigger. We need to have the capacity to receive greater. And we call that growth on this planet. Okay? So, all of these ideas, all of our prayers, they're cries for an expansion. After we reaffirm in our prayers for the greater, which we do, we pray in the morning or the evening, we ask for the greater prosperity or love that we seek. The minute we do that, we step right into the world of the familiar. The same stuff, the same perceptions. And it looks like nothing changes because the change is so very slow. This month, this entire month, we've been talking about shifting our patterns. The key being getting out of the familiar. We want to learn to experience life in a new way, a way that opens us up to think differently, to perceive ourselves differently, to expand what we currently believe to be true. So I wanted to share with you something that Jesus said in the Aquarium. This is 17:14 through 20, and he is a little boy. We know that he's less than 12 years old because he has not yet had the experience of going to the temple and getting lost. Y'all remember that when he was 12? So Jesus is having a moment in the evening with his mother, and he says, "The rabbi seems to think that God is partial in his treatment of the sons of men, that Jews are favored and blessed above all other men. I do not see how God can have his favorites and be just. Are not Samaritans and Greeks and Romans just as much the children of the Holy One as are the Jews? I think the Jews have built a wall about themselves, and they see nothing on the other side of it." We don't do that, do we? They do not know that flowers are blooming over there, that sowing times and reaping times belong to anybody and everybody, not just the Jews. It surely would be well if we could break these barriers down so that the Jews might see that God has other children that are just as blessed. I want to leave this land of the Jews and meet my kin in other countries of my fatherland. And we know that in a couple of chapters he does just that. He leaves the comfort of his own familiar space and goes to visit many countries. India, Persia, Greece. But he knew that he needed to see life beyond that which had been created in his world. What was being reflected was isolation and limitation. And the first principle that Jesus Christ walked out on was that knowing that God is everywhere. There's not just a land, a space, a sacred monument where God exists. God is everywhere, in all of the earth, and available to you in any moment, in any time, in any place. That was the principle that he walked out on. Being bigger. When we're bigger and we step out on that belief that God is everywhere, there's a second step that follows. And that is the step of trusting. Not to be afraid and trusting your truth in this new space. A few chapters later, when he's an adult, he is walking through Samaria. And you all know that the Samaritans were deeply hated by the Jews. When Jesus gave the parable of the Good Samaritan, it offended all those who listened. Do you know that? He was speaking to a Jewish crowd. And when the Samaritan became the hero of the story, this was not a good thing. This was outrageous. How could a low-life Samaritan be our hero? That's how deeply they resented them. Well, in the story of the woman at the well, Jesus has been walking through Samaria, and he stops and he asks this woman for water. And I know you all remember the story. And the woman said, "How can you, a Jew, sink so low as to ask me for water?" Because that would never be done. He couldn't even drink the water a Samaritan would draw for him. So he had to explain to her his truth. Going into a new space that is unfamiliar doesn't mean we leave our truth behind. This is what he says. "Think not it strange that I, a Jew, should speak to you, for I am one with you. The universal Christ who was and is and evermore shall be is manifest in me. But Christ belongs to every man. God scatters forth his blessings with a lavish hand, and he is not more kind to one than to another. I just came from Judah's hills, and God's same sun was shining, and his flowers were blooming, and the night stars were just as bright as they are here. God cannot cast away a child. The Jew, the Greek, the Samaritan are equal in his sight. The lines that separate sons of men are made of straw, and just a single breath of love would blow them all away." And the people were amazed and said, "The Christ that was to come has surely come." And then he stayed and he taught them. Speaking our truth even in an unfamiliar space. Speaking our truth in an unfamiliar space. Being who we are, but finding the similarity with those around us. When we demonstrate our truth, we are one in God's heart. And this is what Spirit said this morning. As we seek to expand, going into that which is perhaps not familiar, being who we are in the midst of it, they said, allow the energy to create synergy. When you find, through the laws of energy, when you find a common bond, that's synchronicity. Then it begins to resonate. And then synergy is created, that which is greater than the sum of the parts. When you go into that which is unfamiliar and you're able to find a common bond, synergy can be created to bind the moment with whoever you're with. As we walk into something not familiar, something that we want to use to expand ourselves, we can actually stand on two familiar building blocks and then let everything else grow. God is there, and we are children of God. These two blocks of familiarity can actually be the energy that you allow to grow into synergy. Because God is always there, and we are all children of God. Complicated? Simple. All right. Our whole mission on this planet, for all of us, is to learn to become the demonstration of the divinity that's within our hearts. And each of our divine sparks seeks to express differently. We have many different talents and abilities, many different desires to create in different ways. But allowing ourselves that space to express, we need to also allow ourselves that space to connect and to grow. Do you realize how often you limit yourself because you are afraid that you're going into a space where God is not? You're afraid that you will not be able to connect. You're afraid that you're going to connect with people that are not resonant with you. And so we stay in our little worlds, and we walk those little worlds. And if we do happen to stretch out, we don't show this new space who we are. We shut down who we are, we go into that which is unfamiliar, but we go with a cloaked disguise. I'm not going to tell you I'm metaphysical, I'm not going to tell you I'm a child of God. I'm going to cloak myself till I figure out who you are and am I safe. And when I do that, what am I saying about the presence of God? God is not with this strange person. God is not with these strange events. Learning to be uncloaked, learning to trust that God is everywhere and everyone is child of God, gives you the freedom to grow wherever you are planted. Take a breath. We just got back from Turkey. And next Sunday, I'm hoping that some of our travelers will come during our Sunday service and share with you some of their experiences, some of the spiritual ahas they received, and some of the wonderful adventures that we had. But this morning I just wanted to share with you a moment that I had. We were in Istanbul. Istanbul. It never occurred to me that Istanbul was also Constantinople. And I teach about Constantine all the time. Because Constantine was the one who actually created the Catholic Church. He unified all the little Christian churches in 300 AD. It was 300 years. There were many, many little churches. No one central church, no one hub. But Constantine created this council and brought all the Christians together. And he said, we're going to agree, people, or we're not going home. And so they came up with some precepts, and they said, this will be our universal church. And so they called it Catholic, because that's what the word means, universal. Never in my mind did I think, I'm actually standing where Constantine created this energy. Maybe not the council met here, but the city. So we were on our real first day of touring, and I was oblivious to life, you know, trying to take in all the sights. And we went to a place called St. Sophia, Hagia Sophia, and this was a beautiful church. It means the Church of Holy Wisdom. It was actually created after Constantine died, but shortly thereafter, like in the 360s. And a church had stood on that ground ever since. Where we were was the third incarnation. And this third incarnation was created in the 500s. The first one burned, the second one burned. So about 537, they built this huge, huge church. It was beautiful. It had wonderful energy in it. It had been a church until the 1400s. And in 1453, with the Ottoman Empire coming in, it had become a mosque. Then it stayed a mosque until the current days, 1935, when it was deemed a museum. So in the beginning, the Christian mosaics and the Christian decorations were everywhere. Then when the Muslims came in, they painted over, and all the beautiful Muslim decorations were everywhere. So I'm reading energy. I'm just reading the energy and just really trying to get a fix on everything that's happening. And so we were walking around, and I've forgotten who came up to me. Maybe it was Cheryl or Keisha. Someone came to me and said, hey, did you see the mosaic over the door? And I went, no, I didn't see that. I'm reading energy. And she said, I think it's the one on the Aquarium Gospel cover. And I went, oh, yeah, yeah. I said, I'll catch it on the way back. I've been in this work for so long. Patrick and I have seen so many Aquarium Gospel covers. They change it every so many years. So when this new cover came out, I saw the new cover and I went, yeah, Jesus didn't look like that, but I guess it's okay. You know, I didn't want to rush out and buy the new book for the cover. I wasn't real impressed with the cover. So we're walking around and doing our tour. So many stories. I hope they get shared next week. So much activity, so much work was done by our group in this building. It was just amazing. And then we went upstairs, and there was a huge mural of mosaics on the wall. And this is where this was. It was absolutely breathtaking. It was big, and there was Mary on one side and John the Baptist on the other. They say it was actually, what do you do when you do mosaics? You don't paint. It was tiled in the 1200s. So it had been there for a while in this beautiful church. And I was struck by the energy of the eyes of this picture of Jesus Christ. And I kept trying to take a picture of his eyes. I kept trying, and my hands were just shaking, and I couldn't get that shot. But what was going through my mind was, I am looking at a pictorial that has been looked at by millions of visitors, millions of tourists, and millions of Christians, and millions of Muslims over all these years. But what I felt in those eyes was that people have looked to those eyes to connect with the love of the Christ. And it was so beautiful, and I just felt through time, through space, a connection with everyone who had gazed on that picture with love in their hearts. And it was so powerful for me. It was just a moment when it didn't even matter any differences. We had one similarity. We had shared a moment in this beautiful cathedral mosque museum. Just a moment of feeling that, the picture, that representation of love. In that feeling, I was one with everyone that had had that experience. There were no differences. And in that moment, I was so proud to have an Aquarian Gospel with the cover on it. And this is Patrick's. I must get my own. To know that came from a moment in time when someone loved the message of the Christ. And to know that we were standing on the ground where Christianity became a unit. Whether we agree with how it was done or not, it became a unit there. It was a very powerful trip. So that was a moment of synergy being created, when the energy shared became greater than the sum of the parts. And in that synergy, my heart was lifted. So for all of us now in our world, seeking a common frequency allows greater acceptance. When you're walking and trying to expand your world, and you seek just a common frequency, don't you begin to accept that person even though you may not understand their language? You accept that energy? Greater acceptance then allows expansion of consciousness. And I want you to think about people in our world that you tend to dismiss. Do you not dismiss people? The minute you dismiss them, you've now taken them out of your world. Rather than doing that, why not try to find a common link? Maybe you can't say they loved God and you loved God. But maybe you can say, oh, I bet they love their child. I bet that person that I'm getting ready to dismiss out of my world just loves having lunch. Just like me. Loves their soft bed. Loves their son, their daughter. Anytime you can put a common thread between you and another person, you've now created acceptance. And anything beyond that doesn't matter. Think about all the people that you see in your world that you dismiss. Every person that you see going through the mall is a child of God. Every person that says, excuse me, as they bump you, rushing on to their destination is a child of God. Every person that's on your tail in traffic, trying to rush to the most important place that they need to be to, far more important than who you are to them, is a child of God. And yet we walk around dismissing, even in our little world, dismissing these qualities of light that these people are. So, dismissing people separates life force and keeps everyone in small contained worlds. And you, them, everyone. Finding that little thread of acceptance, that little thread of commonality, that little thread allows you to begin to expand. How easy is that? And it doesn't cost anything, does it? What I have learned in this past day or so is something that I tend to forget. So I shall try not to. When we are having a moment with one of our brothers and sisters, and we're trying to find that place of acceptance, if you can't find it, if you've so dismissed them, if you're so opposed to them that you cannot find it, lead with gratitude. Find something about the relationship to be grateful for. You can be grateful that they're existing on the planet. You can be grateful that they've stopped to even speak to you. You can be grateful that they're in your world. Gratitude heals. Gratitude allows acceptance to be created. Acceptance allows cooperation, and cooperation allows expansion. And it's hard to remember that, especially if you've got this accounting mind. I don't know if any of you have one of those, where it's like, okay, this was our agreement. Have you ever come to, we've agreed this? you said this and you said that, and now that's not happening. Someone comes and says, well, we're not going to do that. And the minute they say that, you buck up and say, really? Whereas you could lead with gratitude. You know what? I hear what you're saying. I'm really grateful for everything that's gone so far. I'm so grateful. Now, what were you saying about this other issue? What can we do to heal this? Do you see how gently that allows you to maintain connection without dismissing?